Do Chinese citizens not want to live in China anymore? What is the reason behind the huge exit of the people from the country? With rising foreclosures, it's safe to say COVID-19 did a good number on China's economy. China's real estate market has one foot in the quicksand, with crisis after crisis looming over the nation. The country is desperately trying to keep the housing market afloat, but is it all in vain? Let's explore the struggles facing China's property market and what this could mean for the nation's future. The start of the property crisis. Turns out China's real estate crisis is a result of its own government policy. What do we mean by that? Let's break it down for you. In August 2020, Beijing decided to implement a new scheme, 3 red lines. This was done in order to manage China's real estate market, which had been expanding for years. Now, the main goal of this policy was simple. Firstly, it was to make sure that the economy didn't rely too much on real estate. Secondly, it was to stop people from buying houses just to make money, because all this did was create such a drastic increase in prices that most of the middle-class people just couldn't afford houses anymore. Under this 3 red lines policy, all the property developers had to do was follow some strict rules for their own financial health. The rules were put in place to regulate the money that flowed from the banks and other financial institutions in the hands of these property developers. Now, one of the rules under the policy restricted these developers from borrowing any more money than they had in the form of stocks. But as it turned out, many developers had been working outside of the 3 red lines. In basic economic terms, they borrowed more money than they had in reserve to pay back. What happened next would be a nightmare for any economy. Then came high debts and zero cash flow. These property developers had now collected a huge amount of debt, and due to the new policy and rules, the industry had its hand tied. Remember Evergrande, one of China's largest developers? Due to a severe crash crunch, it missed an interest payment due to its creditors abroad in December 2021 and defaulted. In July 2022, home values fell for the 11th consecutive month, and currently they are down up to 30% from a year ago. Since then, there have been no signs of improvement. All in all, the sector's problems have gotten worse. Developers have been fighting against the cash shortage to finish projects on time. This caused a chain reaction, and finally, the pre-sale property purchasers had had enough. Protests erupted in the southeast city of Jingdezhen at the start of 2022 and spread to almost 100 cities. Almost 300 homeowner associations are fighting for their rights. The people have boycotted and refused to pay mortgages as their home development has been on a halt since years. According to a calculation by Deutsche Bank, the valuation of the mortgages impacted by the boycotts is between 1.8 and 2 trillion Chinese yuan, or about 5% of all mortgage loans. Next struggle, foreclosures on the rise. Now, we have to point out that the situation is different from the subprime mortgage crisis in the US in 2007. In the 2008 crisis, high-risk borrowers defaulted on loans, but the homeowners in China can afford to pay mortgages and have deliberately chosen not to. Do you think the homeowners are right not to pay mortgages? Whatever the value judgment, the result of such a move was simple. There was a sharp decline in real estate investment and a critical effect on home values. One of the biggest independent real estate study companies in the nation, China Index Academy, reports that there were 606,000 foreclosed homes last year. You know how much of an increase this was from 2021? A shocking 35.7%. However, compared to the prior year, there were 14.9% fewer houses sold at auction. On top of this, real estate research confirmed that the majority of the towns with high foreclosure ratings were most located in the rich and elite areas, like the Yangtze River Delta and Pearl River Delta regions, as well as central and western China. A local real estate dealer who specializes in foreclosures explained how there are currently several hundred houses being seized upon each month, and the number is gradually rising. Another dealer with the last name Zhao, who works in Chengdu in the southwest, has also observed a rise in foreclosures. According to Zhao, employees were frequently left unable to pay their debts after being fired or having their pay reduced, all because of COVID-19. When their businesses were impacted by the downturn and they were unable to turn things around, company owners in other cases used their houses as collateral. But here's the catch. Analysts believe that the rise in foreclosures isn't just the outcome of a recent economic shock. It also eventually represents more serious issues with the Chinese economy. China's dependency on the real estate market as one of its primary GDP contributors has been pointed out as dangerously risky, and because of this, the housing bubble control had left both families and developers with alarmingly high levels of debt, putting them in a vulnerable position. People's opinion on the crisis. On the bright side, the decision to abandon the zero-COVID containment policy has contributed to rising house values for the first time in a year in January 2023. According to analysts, the industry won't begin to recover effectively until later this year. A new poll carried out by the groups associated with Ant Group shows that the Chinese families are drowning in debt, a sharp rise from the previous recorded levels. Analysts think that the economy might finally pick up in the latter half of the year, but people are still super skeptical about the whole thing. In fact, according to a recent survey reported by Reuters, lots of Chinese families are saying no thanks to buying a home right now. Can you blame them? With COVID-19 wrecking everything, people are struggling financially, mentally, and physically. And because of all this, more and more people are defaulting on their property payments. It's a real mess. The poll also found that the percentage of families who decided not to buy a home has risen from 20.1% to 27.2% of respondents, just between July 2022 and October 2022. Government policies for sustainable growth of the market. Since the beginning of 2022, more than 300 cities have released housing market support policies, including the easing of a number of buying limitations. Beihai lowered the required down payment for families buying a second home from 60% to 40%. With this, cities also included housing-related supportive measures into their policy programs for other issues like senior care, promoting reproduction, or attracting talent. They've also taken it a step further and developed locally specific policies to minimize the negative impacts of soaring prices in their communities. All the while, the central government concentrated on containing risks from soaring prices and increasing financial debt. That's actually smart, but is it enough? There's no doubt that long-term efforts by China to improve industry regulation are anticipated to continue in order to maintain home costs and market expectations. The global economy and the future of China relies on it. The government thinks that people should use property for living in, not just buying and selling to make money. They want to help people buy their first home and upgrade to a better one. To encourage people to buy homes, some banks in certain cities are allowing people to take out mortgages even if they are older, up to 80 or 95 years old. If they can't pay back the loan, their children can take over. But the catch is, this is not a rule for the whole country yet. Before, regulators said that people should stop borrowing money for mortgages when they are around 70 years old. But now some banks are letting people borrow money when they are older. In the future, it is expected that China will continue to work on regulating the housing sector in order to stabilize prices and the expectations of the market. The government has made it clear that housing should be used for living in, not for making money through speculation. The Chinese government has also revealed their intention to help people purchase their new homes, in addition to upgrading to a second one. But there is no news of any new policies to make this happen till yet. Do you think the Chinese government can revert back from its economic crisis? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to check out our next video for more updates.